You're listening to My Kind of Country. Thank you so much for joining us on a Monday night. My special guest has been on my show many times, and I always look forward to our conversations because he has some of the best stories and the best music. And gotten to spend quite a bit of time. Every time he comes up here to Traverse City, we just love to have him here in town. He does the best shows, and he's here with me tonight. He's got a brand new single and some other great things we're going to talk about. It's a pleasure to welcome country music legend Ronnie McDowell to My Kind of Country. Ronnie, how are you tonight, my friend?
Scott, I'm doing great. I'm live and in color down here in Hendersonville, Tennessee, where Conway Twitty called me one day in 1987, and he goes, hey, you need to get down here closer to me. Well, my hometown is only 15 miles from here, so the next day I came down to Hendersonville, and I went on this road called Center Point Road, and I pulled up to this old house. I didn't know it was built in 1802. But there was a guy standing out, Scott, in the driveway, and I pulled up, and I said, hey, you wouldn't want to sell this place, would you? And he goes, well, son, me and my wife are getting a divorce. You're in luck. I'll sell it to you today. I bought it the next day, and I'm still here.
Wow, that's really cool.
We can blame Conway Twitty for me being here in Hendersonville.
Well, that's great, man. I just read, too, that they're going to save the mansion there at Twitty City, too. That's a great thing.
Yeah, they're going to save Twitty City. But there was such an uproar when people heard they was going to tear it down, and so they stopped. So thank goodness, because Conway was not only a mentor and friend, but he was like my dad, and I miss him. I think about him all the time.
Oh, man, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Well, buddy, you've got a brand new song, and I want to talk about that and play it for our listeners tonight. And I love the title. It's Mary Joanna. Tell me about this great song.
Well, my brother passed away 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I was going up to take a picture of my mother's house where I grew up. And just before I got there, that voice on my shoulder said, go visit your brother. I walked in the house where he was, and he was sitting in a big easy chair, and I said, brother, how you doing? He said, Ronnie, my sugar's 525, my blood pressure's real low. And I said, well, brother, we're going to call you an ambulance because that's not good. So the whole time, Scott, that before they got there, we laughed, we joked. That's all we ever did anyway. And we talked about Conway because he drove my bus during those 8 years. And while we were all asleep, all the band, Conway, his bus driver, and my brother would go into a truck stop, sit there and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And they became really close friends. And that night, by the way, my brother died in the ambulance.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But anyway, to make a long story short, that night when he died, I was lying in the bed, and my son Tyler was in the kitchen. I heard this god-awful noise. So I got up, and I said, Tyler, what was that? He said, Dad, I didn't do it. Well, I've had a Conway Twitty album. I'm looking at it right now, sitting on a shelf, a vintage Conway album. And it had fell off with one of my pictures in the floor. There was no reason for it to do that. It's been sitting there for 10 years. So I knew that was my brother telling me he was okay. And so the next night I went to Shipshewana, Indiana, Amish country, did a show, lying in the bed after the show. And here comes this song, Mary Joanna, out of the blue. It was funny. All the lyric came to me instantly. And I knew my brother had given me this song. And the first person I played it for when I got through with it was Johnny Rodriguez. And he laughed so hard. He said, Ronnie, do you have any idea what you've done? I said, well, I didn't do it. My brother gave it to me. He said, it doesn't matter. He said, I promise you this is going to be a major hit for you. So that's what we did. We did a video with it. I found a beautiful African-American 18-year-old girl. She looks like a Hawaiian island girl. And so we all dressed in Hawaiian shirts and leis. We did the video 2 weeks ago tonight, and it'll come out tomorrow, by the way, the full video. And we got Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Snoop Dogg, and Willie Nelson puppets in the video. And it's just hilarious. It's funny. So I can't wait till you see the whole video. And Mary Joanna, she's absolutely dropped it. And it's about a girl, Mary Joanna. So that's what the song is and how it came to be.
That's a great story. My gosh. You know, they say miracles appear in the strangest of places, and I guess that really fits in this case of this song, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and that's the way The King Is Gone came to me as well. That afternoon, I think I've told you this before, when Elvis passed away, it was 2:22 in the afternoon. And the reason I know that, because when I looked at the clock before I turned the radio on, that little voice on my shoulder said, "Look at the clock," and it was 2:22. Well, ever since then, Scott, all I see is 2:22. Every day, all the time. So February the 22nd, I woke up and I looked at a Mega Millions ticket. And I went, well, that's funny. I got 4 numbers right in a row. I thought, well, I got $20, I bet. So I went to eat breakfast, come back and got my ticket, and I went to the little store where I get my gas here in Hendersonville. She put it in the machine, and it went, woohoo! And the girl looked at me, and she goes, you do realize you just hit that for $500.
Nice.
And I said, you're kidding. I thought it was like 15 or $20. And I went, oh, well, it is 222.
I'll be darned.
I see that all the time, especially if I go to Memphis or if I go to Tupelo.
Well, yeah.
And that's okay.
That's all right. That's really cool. Folks, you can go to RonnieMcDowell.com. That's Ronnie's official website. And Mary Jo Wanna is available there, and we will put the links on our Facebook page for My Kind of Country, and we'll put the video link on there as well so you can check that out. And if you're down Tennessee way, I know that Ronnie's doing a lot of shows at the Donahoe there. And Ronnie, how did this come about? You've done a lot of shows here at the Donahoe. How did this whole thing come about for you?
Well, because of COVID, Scott, we had to have a place because everything was just literally dead in the water. Shows, everything. So I called John Cook, who owns it, and asked him if we could come over there and stream. And we did, and this is 4 years later, next month. And it's turned into like a regular TV show. And this weekend, my guest is my buddy Ken Mellons.
Oh, wow.
And so...
That's cool. I love Ken. He was on my show not too awful long ago. Jukebox Junkie. Man, I love that one.
Yeah, and Rub-a-Dub in my tub.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And I know you've streamed those on Facebook, Ronnie McDowell's Facebook page. We'll put that information on our page for you as well. You can get on there. And if you can't be there in person, at least you can watch it on Facebook, too. It's always entertaining, that's for sure. Ronnie, you've got a couple other duets I want to mention, too. Our good friend Julie Keach Harris, you did just a great version of Jackson with her.
Yeah, Julie's such a sweet person, and she asked me if I would do that, and I was more than happy to do it. And I love Julie and her husband. They're just good folks.
And I got to ask you about your duet with Dolly. This is not only just a cool, iconic duet, but man, the song I Dreamed About Elvis is just fabulous. Tell me about this whole project that you did with Dolly Parton.
Well, I'm very happy. Last year was an unbelievable year because of Dolly Parton, thanks to her, including me on her #1 rock album, and not only that, the biggest album of her career. And remember what I told you, that afternoon Elvis passed away, and it was 2:22, and all of that song came to me. I was barely 6 years old when I first heard him sing. And ever since I was a little boy, I'm like Elton John, Paul McCartney, Bruce Springsteen. Elvis is my total inspiration. And lo and behold, that record sold 1 million records in a week. And it went on to sell 6 million records. Then I became Elvis Presley's voice. And all these movies and TV shows and commercials. And then Dolly Parton called me, and she goes, Ronnie, I wrote a song about Elvis called I Dreamed About Elvis, because for 2 years I dreamed about him. I said, you dreamed about Elvis for 2 years? She goes, yes, and he was lying under a street light, all bathed in a blue light, and he kept looking at me going, indigo blue, indigo blue. And she goes, I didn't know what in the world he was trying to tell me. And I said, well, Dolly, that's a color. And lo and behold, that song, when she wrote it, she had no earthly idea that song was going to be on the biggest album of her career. And neither did I. Man. I mean, what an unbelievable. Johnny Rodriguez told me the other night, he kept staring at me, and he said, you're the luckiest sucker on planet Earth. I said, why is that, Johnny? He said, how'd you wind up on an album with Judas Priest? And I said, Johnny, Hey, your guess is as good as mine, but thanks to Dolly Parton, I'm on there with Paul McCartney and Elton John and one of my favorite all-time singers, Steve Perry, Fleetwood Mac, and the list goes on and on. But all because of Elvis Presley, if you think about it, by proxy. Dolly is as big a Elvis fan as Ronnie McDowell. And so that's how that came to be. And I just played her hotel in Pigeon Forge. And on one wall, there's 50 albums that she's recorded in her career. And I was standing there looking at that before the show, and I went, now here are 50 albums, but the biggest album she's ever had is right now #1 rock album. Now, where's the irony in that?
No kidding.
And it's the biggest album of her career, and then I wound up on it, and because of Elvis Presley. I can't get away from this guy, and I don't want to.
Well, I would certainly think so. That's great, and that's a great album. I'll tell you what. I had my reservations about it when I first heard about it. Things like that can go either way. But I'll tell you what, Dolly can pull off anything. Oh man, you could just hear the camaraderie. You could just tell you had so much fun doing that song. And I think it's great. I'm going to play it for my listeners tonight. Speaking of writing songs, you also wrote a beautiful song that I want to play tonight. Debbie Grisham sent this to me, and I want to thank her for that and for setting up our interview today. But it's Chris McDaniel, Take Time, and I understand this is a song that you wrote as well.
Yes, Scott, I wrote that. It was on my first album, the King Is Gone album, and I wrote that when I was 21 years old, which is now over a half a century ago, and I wanted to put that on my album because, first and foremost, I'm a Christian, and I just believe that if you take time for Jesus, he'll take time for you.
That's right. Well, Chris did a beautiful job on it. I'm going to play it for our listeners tonight. I'm
going to be honest with you, I love Chris's version a lot better than mine. I told him that. Well, as a matter of fact, he's recorded a few of the songs that I've written, but anyway, I love his version of Take Time for Jesus.
It's beautiful, that's for sure. I think that's probably a really great thing as a songwriter, to hear a song that someone else does and you like it better than the own way that you would have done it yourself. I think that's got to be a really huge compliment to you as a songwriter.
Well, it is, and when George Strait recorded Under These Conditions, I had recorded a version, but let me tell you what, when George Strait did it, you could stick a fork in it, it was done.
That is the truth. RonnieMcDowell.com is the website, and you can pick up all of his great music there. You've got some releases that you've put out recently that are available on your website of your old albums, and some stuff that was not released before, including a Live from the 80s album. Man, I love that. I love live recordings.
Well, I do too, and Chris McDaniel, he finds all of this stuff. He knows more about me than I know about myself. Where he found a live version of me at the Lone Star Cafe with Otis Blackwell. And Otis got up and sang Don't Be Cruel with Me, which he wrote. He wrote All Shook Up. He wrote Great Balls of Fire and Fever. And I couldn't believe it. You know who else was in the audience that night? Doc Pomus.
Oh, my gosh.
Doc Pomus wrote Save the Last Dance for me, but he came that night because he wanted to hear The King Is Gone. He loved that. He said it made him cry. And he also wrote Suspicion, so I sang Suspicion for him, and I was so honored that he and Otis Blackwell came to see me. And Otis and I became really good friends before he passed away. As a matter of fact, Otis came to the studio when me and Conway Twitty recorded It's Only Make Believe.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. Man,
and I do want to tell you, 2 months ago, I re-signed with Curb Records, and I love Mike Curb and Linda Curb. He first signed me in 1984, and I was out in California doing one of those Elvis projects, and I was there to sign with Curb. So I have literally been with Mike Curb since 1984, but I just re-signed with him at 73, and I think that's a milestone for me, especially to be 73 and sign a new record contract.
Hey, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that because,
Thank you.
you know, good music has no expiration date, and you continuously are putting out great music time after time. And I'm so glad that you're with a label that's going to get that out there for you, buddy. That's great news. Congratulations. That's a milestone.
Well, thank you. And I want to tell you, Scott, too, that me and Bill Medley and Elvis Presley have recorded a song together. And what we did, we took the very first thing Elvis ever recorded, My Happiness, in 1953 at Sun Records, where he paid $2.50 for that. We were able to, algorithms to take his guitar off and build a whole new track around his vocal. And I will send that to you, and you can play the folks, me and the legendary, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Bill Medley, and, of course, my total icon, Elvis Presley, together.
Oh, man, thank you. I can't wait to hear that. That's fantastic. I love Bill Medley. Boy, he, Righteous Brothers, some of the best beautiful harmonies ever. And he did that song with Jennifer Warnes on the Dirty Dancing. I've had the time of my life, man. I love that song.
Well, and that's a story, too. Mike Curb, he was with Mike Curb. And, by the way, my friend Bill Medley just re-signed with Mike Curb right after me.
That's great.
And pretty much based on this recording of he and Elvis Presley and I. Because that is, you know, I can't wait till you hear it. But anyway, I used to watch Bill Medley on Shindig and Hullabaloo when I was 14 and 15 with Bobby Hatfield. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever dream that I'd be knowing Bill Medley or recording with him. I have now recorded 5 songs with Bill Medley, and he's one of my best friends in the whole wide world. So I'm the most blessed soul on the planet, Scott. But let me tell you why I'm blessed. October the 26th, 1968, I landed in Saigon in Vietnam. I'm a 3-term combat veteran of the Vietnam War, but the reason I'm so blessed is because Jimmy Dale Hunter and Raymond Wright, who I went to school together with, we walked home together, played basketball together. They didn't get to come back, Scott. They died at 18 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
And I came back to live my dream.
Well, thank you for your service, Ronnie. That's a wonderful story, and we are all blessed to know you and have your wonderful music. And it's a blessing for me doing this radio show. I've gotten to meet so many great people in the music business and gotten to know them and gotten to spend time with them, and you're at the top of that list, my friend. I always look forward to our conversations, and I sure look forward to any time we get to see you.
Well, Scott, same here. And tell your beautiful 18-year-old daughter that I said hi, and you tell her this for me, that I'm so glad that she took after her mom.
Amen. I agree. You got that right.
I'm just kidding, of course.
Hey, man, I'll be the first to admit that. I thank the Lord for that many times. Thank God you don't look like me. Oh, man. Well, we're going to play Mary Joanna for our listeners right now and these other great songs we just talked about. And RonnieMcDowell.com is the website. Ronnie, as always, love from our family to you. And thank you so much for taking time to be on My Kind of Country.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you, buddy.